In today's intentional masterclass, Francois and I will be talking about addiction. No, we're not going to be talking about drugs or alcohol or gambling or porn or sex. We're going to be talking about a very interesting addiction, the addiction to success. Intentionality with Paul Kempf, for people who lead with intention and live with impact. Francois, do you think you're addicted to success, my friend?
I want to say no, but I'm sure in the episode that we are going to be uncovering many layers to that question, and it'll probably end up being yes, but I can't wait to see where this goes.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to lead you into it, and I'm going to try and convince you that I do believe you're addicted to success.
Incredible.
But more importantly, what the consequences of an addiction to success is.
Yes.
And the way I want to start this today is by talking around ambition.
Yeah.
So my first question to you today, and I really look forward to hearing what you think, is can you be too ambitious, over-ambitious? Is that possible?
I think the immediate answer is yes. I absolutely do believe that one can be too ambitious. I think my mom once taught me this, or it was my dad, I can't remember, but it was an Afrikaans saying, te veel van enigiets is sleg. So too
Te veel
much.
van 'n goeie ding.
Te veel van 'n goeie ding.
That's
Thank
the
you
one.
for correcting me. So too much of anything is a bad thing. And I think too much ambition, one, exists, and two, is probably then a negative thing.
Okay, let's unpack that. In
Yes.
my opinion, ambition is a good thing. We hear a lot about ambition being good.
Yeah.
I think when it becomes too much, it tends towards the word greed. And greed is obviously bad. Greed is a vice.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is where that line is.
And
When
what's the difference?
Yes. When is somebody just ambitious?
Yeah.
And when does that ambition turn into greed?
I think let's try and define the two, at least from our perspective, right? So ambition, in my mind, is having a purpose or a goal or a desired outcome that requires a plan of action. And we're heading into that season, by the way, where come end of December, begin January, we'll hear about goals for the year 2026. We'll hear about New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, that's right.
And those require a plan of action. I mean, so many podcasts that I've listened to where those, and I'm sure IWPK has done information on this as well.
A lot, yeah.
Where this falls flat is when there isn't a plan of action. So I think ambition, for me at least, is setting something in the ground, in the future, and then having that energy, focus, attention, intentionality, chasing towards that. Often ambition, and when I get described as ambitious, if I listen to how it gets explained, it's your energy, it's your passion, it's your vibe, it's how you show up. So that for me is ambition. Before we go to greed, do you agree with that as a definition for ambition?
Yes, I do. And I want to add to it. You remember we've done an episode on success and confidence.
Yes.
I think it's a very similar type of conversation.
Yes.
About that line where the one is something that serves you. It's something that adds value.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is something that detracts value,
Yes.
that takes value away.
Yes.
That's kind of the way I look at ambitious and being over-ambitious or being greedy.
Yeah.
Ambition is something that serves you, that takes you to a purpose, as you have said. But the moment that thing doesn't serve you anymore, that's where the problem comes.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, from a greed perspective, I immediately go to selfishness. I go to at all cost. I will achieve this thing. I will do this thing at all cost, at the expense of relationships, at the expense of other people's well-intent. Often you hear of pyramid schemes as an example, where the intent was beautiful and then someone took advantage of other individuals to benefit their own greed, which is their dark side of their ambition.
And listen to the words that you're using now, because this brings us to where I'm actually going with this thing, and that's addiction.
Yes.
How ambition can become greed, can turn into addiction. And the exact things that you've described now are things you hear when you talk about addiction, other types of addiction, about the dark side, about how that consumes your life, how it destroys other people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think for me, ultimately, the reason I started with this question is I really want to explore today how we go from ambition to crossing the line to greed, and how that greed becomes an addiction to success.
Sure. I can't wait to unpack that, because I believe understanding the lines or the boundaries or the borders of those transitions can guide us and the listeners to self-reflection, to self-awareness, to asking the tough question when looking in the mirror, is this me? Am I nearing the next boundary?
Seeing the warning signs.
See the warning signs and then maybe change behavior.
Yeah. Okay. Next question I have for you. I'm just wondering, success addiction, the way that we've unpacked it now, don't you think that's just an overcorrection of something else in our lives? And before you answer me, when I was preparing for this episode, I started thinking about this idea of overcorrection. And I realized that that's something that actually happens a lot in our lives. Yeah, everything we do. We can use examples like exercise, dieting, sport, our golf. When you're struggling, you try and overcorrect something and then you struggle with something different.
Yes.
When you want to lose weight, you all of a sudden start exercising at the beginning of a year, you really hit the gym.
Yeah.
It's like almost that overcorrection.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that success addiction is simply an overcorrection to something in your life.
Yeah.
It might be something like a perceived lack that you have elsewhere in your life, a tough childhood, past failure, or some deep-seated insecurity.
Yeah.
What do you think of my theory that success addiction often goes with a insecurity?
I absolutely agree with you. And I'm going to put my psychologist hat on for a second.
Please do.
So what happens in a lot of humans is what we call projection. So I am projecting towards something, but in the process of projecting, I'm actually hiding something else. I once read this book, and I can't remember the title, but there was a one-liner. It's not about this, it's about that. And often the this is the overcorrection to mask the that which you're not dealing with.
Yeah.
And that there can be multiple things. You mentioned childhood, you mentioned trauma. What immediately comes to mind, which might be a reflection point for me, is this idea of being good enough. Am I good enough? And if my perception, at least around myself, is that I am not, and therefore I am lacking, I am now overcorrecting based off ambition. And you know why, Paul? Is because there is this belief that ambition, amongst many other idols, can give me something. It can serve me in a particular way. And we see this on social media. We see this in our friends groups. We see this all around us, is the materialistic viewpoint of ambition and what that can be for you or serve you with is something that people buy into because they're not prepared to deal with the what. And then they focus on the this or the that. And so I guess then, yes to your question, and the challenge then becomes, is it true ambition or is it an overcorrection?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was smiling when you were saying that because I again couldn't help but think about that episode we did about confidence and arrogance.
Yes.
Because in my experience, more often than not, somebody that turns from confidence to arrogance is also hiding something.
100%.
Is also hiding an insecurity. I've seen it so many times.
Yes.
So that leads me just to the next question. That is that, would you say all ambitious driven people are insecure?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. And I think the reason I say that so confidently is that if you can define and control or manage that line we spoke about between when does ambition become greed, I think you're authentically being ambitious.
And there's the intent or the purpose of what I want us to achieve in this episode today, is to try and show the listeners and the viewers that line so that they can be self-aware and realize when you are actually crossing that line.
Yes.
All right. Speaking of self-awareness, there's something I want to talk about around self-worth, because again, it leads back to this whole sex.
Well, there is a correlation between self-worth and sex. You are very right.
Hold on. We're going the wrong way here. That connection between self-worth.
Producers, don't cut that.
And success addiction.
Yes.
I must get that right today.
Yes. Success addiction.
I want to know from you, what is wrong with measuring your self-worth by your achievements, by the success you've achieved in life? Haven't you earned the right to measure your self-worth by achievements in life, by success?
I don't think that there's so much I want to say about this. So firstly, I don't believe it's wrong.
Okay.
Secondly, I don't believe it's something that you have to be measuring. Self-worth stems from identity. It stems from the belief in one's values, what you stand for, what you live for, how you perceive yourself if you had to describe yourself. We spoke about eulogy in the previous episode. If you had to write your own.
That's right.
A big theme in doing that would be around how you value yourself and therefore what you write about yourself. Now, if we go back to your question around self-worth and ambition, defining your worth from an ambition perspective, I believe, is one element. It's one slice of the pizza. It's one view or one flashlight into a human being. The dark side potentially is when it becomes all of it.
Yes.
And
But
there
it's not a slice.
aren't other layers. It's not just one slice.
That's exactly where I wanted this to go. I love the way you put that. Your self-worth can be measured by success and achievements, but it's only a part of it.
Yes.
And if it becomes too big a part of it, that's where the problem lies. Francois, that brings me to a next point, and that is talking about success that can become a prison. Because the conversation is about success addiction, but also how that success addiction can cause problems in your life, can cause some deep-seated problems in your life. I've heard the saying that success can become a prison. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, let's look at what a prison is, right? A prison is a confined space with very little wiggle room, very strict rules, and there's zero innovation, zero creativity, zero thinking outside of the box. You're inside a prison. You are therefore stuck. So when success becomes a prison, you are stuck in your success. Now, how do we become stuck in our success? Well, one, if we lose perspective, if we burn relationships and people around us, if it is therefore the only thing that's left. I'm actually, at the moment, my wife and I started watching a series that I watched many, many years ago called Homeland. Absolutely love it. And the episode 1 starts with him being in a jail cell for 8 years.
Okay.
And I was looking at the image last night and I was like, there is nothing in here. He can go nowhere. He's stuck in a corner like a little baby. This is a grown man like a little baby crouched up in the corner in this jail cell. And I thought to myself, this is all he's got left. There's nothing else. And so when you're in a success jail, you're stuck inside this confined space that you've defined as success, but there's actually nothing left around you.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. I want to, before we move on to how to see the warning signs, how to avoid success addiction, I want us to try and just take this concept. It's a very abstract concept of success addiction and see if we can't make it a little bit more relevant and a little bit more practical. And I've thought of a way to do that.
Okay.
And I think it's actually a very appropriate example today.
Yeah.
And that's sport.
Yeah.
You and I are both big fans of sport, both playing sport and watching sport.
Yeah.
I'm a Liverpool fan. You're not really a football fan.
No.
We're both rugby fans. We both enjoy the Springboks' success at the moment.
Yes.
And I want to use that example of sport to explain to our listeners, our viewers, how success addiction is relevant in that environment as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me give you an example. And again, I mean, players can become addicted to success as well.
100%, especially if you're the Springboks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the more appropriate example for me is fan addiction. And what I mean by that is, think about the Springboks at the moment. We'll use the Springboks because you're not a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
The Springboks at the moment are incredibly successful. They're beating every team out there, even with 14 men.
Yeah.
And everybody's enjoying it every single Saturday. But all of that winning is creating a mentality, not just in the players, but in the fans as well.
Yeah.
We're going to keep on winning.
Yeah.
We're the best in the
We
world.
can't lose.
We rank number 1 in the world. We can't lose. And at some point in time, it's inevitable that they're going to lose somewhere. You know, it might be this weekend against Ireland. I think they're playing against Ireland this weekend. It might be a year from now. We don't know when that's going to happen. But eventually, all sports teams eventually lose.
Yes.
And here's where I think it gets very interesting. And I've seen this with Liverpool, but let's talk about the Springboks. When you have an incredibly successful team and they have an incredibly successful season, because the fans get addicted to that success, the moment they start losing, the fans lose all perspective.
Yes.
It's all of a sudden as if, how useless is this team? Cannot believe they lost this game over the weekend.
Yeah.
Cannot believe what happened here. Why did this guy do that? Why did that guy do that? It's almost as if perspective is lost of the incredible success they've had. As if there's no understanding that, you know what, sometimes in sport, you're going to lose. And to me, this is a great example of success addiction.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. And I can't help but think that there's such an emotional load attached to it. So if we progress with the Springboks at the moment, like they literally have the ability to lift this country's emotional mood. And we're such in a good mood. And then when the inverse happens and we lose, that mood, I mean, you should imagine the mood in New Zealand right now after losing to England.
Yeah.
And I follow a bunch of YouTube channels in New Zealand. It's like a volcano has hit that island. And so they just completely lose perspective around the fact that this is sport, that teams are bound to lose. And they also forget about the past success because they're so emotionally involved and vested into this thing called the All Blacks or the Springboks. And so that's the same for me from a success perspective, is the dopamine that gets released when you achieve something, when you are successful, is immediately connected to a feeling. And that feeling puts you on a high. And so you're continuously chasing that high from a dopamine perspective. And if you then don't get it, it's so easy to lose perspective because of the feeling it creates.
Yeah. Okay. I love the fact that you've brought up dopamine. That's what I want to talk about next. Just before I go there, would you then agree that in sport, what happens is a fan sees the team winning, they merge their identity with that success. They start getting a personal sense of worth and a boost to their personal sense of worth simply because the team is winning.
Yes.
And that makes it so much more difficult to handle, 100%. To control their behavior, to control their perspective and the reactions when the team actually starts 100%. Losing.
And maybe to add a little element to that, it's because of the association. So now we're going back very quickly to identity. If your identity is a function of external factors that you latch onto or identify with, one, you lose control of your identity and self-worth because it's dependent on external factors. And then when those external factors then don't go well, it then directly influences your self-worth and therefore your identity.
Yeah.
And you lose control. And then you lose perspective. Yeah.
So what we're saying to each other is, first, let's hope the Springboks keep on winning for another 10 years. Yes. Let's put it out there in the universe. But secondly, if they somewhere do lose a game, we at least are going to be understanding.
Yes.
We're going to be sympathetic to what happened there.
Yes.
And we're going to keep on supporting them the way that we're supporting them now. And we hope all fans of the Springboks out there will exhibit the same behavior.
Good luck.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the dopamine. I read a great book a while ago about dopamine and the role dopamine plays in addiction.
Dopamination.
Yes, that's right. The role that dopamine plays in almost all kinds of addiction. And I think it's relevant to success addiction as well.
It's incredibly relevant.
Now, let's just frame dopamine. Dopamine is known as the brain's reward chemical. Would you agree with that? So it simply means that when you achieve something, I'm talking now in the context of success, when you achieve something, it triggers a dopamine release. It's that reward you're getting and you feel good. Yep. So what happens is, because you feel good, the brain tries and recreate that behavior so that you get that next hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
Would you agree that it's applicable to success?
Absolutely. Let's for a split second use sport and golf. You can have the worst game on the golf course, have an incredible last hole, make a birdie, feel fantastic about how you ended, and you cannot wait to go back again.
Yeah.
Because that's the last memory the brain has of that round, is how you ended with a birdie, the effect it had, the great putt you sank, and you want to go back.
Good example.
It's exactly the same with success. I often look back, and we're nearing the end of the year now. I'm starting slowly to reflect on 2025, and my mind automatically takes me to the wins that we've had here at Whammy this year. Because those are the feel-good moments that released the dopamine, that made me push through in the hard times. And I believe there's a very good reason why we have this in our brain, is because it's so fucking hard, this world we're in.
Yeah.
Right? And so we need those hits, those moments of feeling good to help us move forward. When it is a success addiction is when you're able to orchestrate and create these moments and you become addicted to them. And then at the cost of everything else, you start chasing them.
Would you agree the dopamine hit in the context of success comes from, we've closed the deal, we've got a new client, I got a promotion, a raise, a bonus. That's what we're talking about.
We are. And throughout all four of your examples you use, there's a financial implication. And so often, I believe success addiction is very strongly positively correlated with money.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. But there's another interesting thing about dopamine that I read, and this was quite fascinating. There was research done where they actually showed that the dopamine system works in a way that the pleasure of the reward itself, let me try that again. The dopamine system is less about the pleasure of the reward itself and more about the motivation and the craving to seek the reward. And this means that the anticipation of a win is often more powerful than the win itself.
Yeah.
Would you think that's relevant to success?
I think it is, but I think it's even more relevant when you've tasted that moment before. And so then the anticipation towards the feeling again is, I think, what the research is suggesting here is, I know how it feels to win. I want that feeling again, but I know it just doesn't come by itself. I need to do something. And so I go through whatever it is that I need to do to get there again. And it's that anticipation towards that outcome, result, feeling, emotion that is the stimulating, incredible anticipation towards it. But because my brain knows what's at the end of the rainbow. Yeah. I might be completely wrong, but that's
No. It makes a lot of sense. And there's a second thing linked to that. Have you heard the words hedonic adaptation before?
Never.
I think it's linked to this. The concept of hedonic adaptation is around when something happens to you or when you do something that makes you feel good, the effect that it has on you is reduced over time. So if we, again, stay away from the other addictions and we bring it back to success, it simply means that the first deal you do, it takes you to a massively high level, but you don't go back to the previous level you were at when the euphoria of that success is over. The second time that thing happens, it doesn't, take you as high again. The third time, even less. The fourth time, even less. It's almost as if you get used to these dopamine hits you're getting and you need something more, something bigger, something more extreme to keep you going. And I think that's one of the things that drives this success addiction, that it's always about the more. You reach your goals this year, next year you've got a bigger goal.
Yeah, 100%. The body has got its own biological dopamine levels. And with external stimuli, including success, drugs, sex, whatever you want to call it, we start changing that balance. And that baseline shifts. And so therefore, it's more and more and more. And I think back to our conversation earlier about boundaries and red flags, is when you can catch yourself that what used to be that feel-good feeling is not more the feeling. That's maybe one of the flags to go. Did I shift that baseline and is it still healthy? Because if the baseline shifts, I am now prepared to do more to get back to that feeling. And often that more is the dark side.
Yes.
Is where the relationship burns, or it's at someone's expense, or an unethical deal.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, the moral compass gets lost and the beauty of chasing ambition switches over into success addiction.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And the dark side you're talking about, for me, is also the dangerous spiral. So the dangerous spiral of success addiction is the success creates confidence,
Yeah.
The confidence demands more success. That keeps on spiraling until you miss that first goal or that first target. And then unfortunately what starts happening is that causes anxiety and stress. That disappointment, which is not really truly reflective of your success because of what we've just been saying, causes you to have more anxiety and stress, reduces your confidence and affects your success. So it's almost as if the spiral gets turned around and becomes a dangerous spiral downwards.
Absolutely. All of these things are correlated. You explained it so beautifully. And I think the beauty of a spiral is if you can identify the spiral and where you are in the cycle or the life cycle of the spiral, there is an opportunity to catch yourself and stop. And I think accountability partners and having good mentors and people around you that you allow, and when you and I have spoken about feedback often in these masterclasses, if you're able to allow someone to come in with perspective and feedback, I think that could be very helpful, because we said a couple of minutes ago, you lose perspective. Yeah. And so you won't know it as you're in this rat race, spinning in the spiral. And so often we just need someone to come in and go, whoa, like, this is what I'm observing. This is not how we know you. Are you aware of the spiral that you're in?
And I think where the difference is between a good spiral, a virtuous spiral that takes you towards confidence and success, and this dangerous spiral that we're talking about is really about your validation.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is if you have continuously, predominantly external or extrinsic validation, that's the dangerous one. I read a quote that I love that I really think explains the trap of extrinsic validation quite well. And that was, applause is a drug that makes you crazy if you get it and crazy if you don't. Because your validation is something external.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
100%. In psychology, we speak about internal and external locus of control. And it's the exact same thing. Where is your validation coming from? Is it internal, external? Your self-worth, your confidence, your identity. All of these things are linked. Now, here's maybe a controversial statement that I'm going to make, right? I don't believe inherently that people have an intrinsic locus of control. Therefore,
why not?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me just explain slightly further, or define rather, if that one line didn't make sense. I don't believe that people are naturally inclined, or I almost want to call it born with, the ability to control and design and manage their own self-worth. i.e., most people's locus of control is external, is influenced by the world, and is therefore constantly in this battle of, am I good enough? And therefore dealing with performance anxiety and stress that you spoke about. Why? We go back to the nature-nurture conversation. The world that we live in right now, and I mean, as we've spoken about this on the episode, my daughter is now 4 months old. I find myself often in the last couple of months thinking about her and her life and what she's going to be exposed to. Social media, AI, the internet, instant gratification, this culture that we're living in that demands attention. It's called the attention economy. None of that sets young children up right now to have a strong internal locus of control, just purely because of the anxiety to perform.
And because of the comparison game.
Because of the comparison game. Because of how success and ambition is defined by the world.
Yes.
And so as parents and as colleagues and as friends, it is so incredibly important for us, the responsibility and ownership that we have to help ourselves and our close friends continuously define and identify this spiral. Because if we don't do that, I just believe the force of this world is much stronger than willpower. Now, there is another element to this, but again, if not lived out daily, it doesn't really have an effect. And I'm referring now to religion. Most religions will give you a blueprint or a model that illustrates internal locus of control. But if not practiced or daily meditated on, it really doesn't take effect. And what does take effect is the world. The world, the pace, the information, social media, and whatever else is around us, that is not going to stop, which then in turn basically sets people up for failure.
I love it. That brings me to something we've talked about a lot so far, and that is, what are the warning signs? How do you actually see the success become an addiction, become a compulsion in the lives of high achievers? Now, in my research, I found 4 very, very interesting warning signs that I want to quickly go through, and then I'd love to hear your opinion on each of them.
Let's do it.
The first one's called the lost pause. You can also describe it as the cult of the constant grind. I love that term.
Sure.
And basically what that says is rest is a liability. It's not a strategic asset. The belief that stopping for rest or reflection means you are losing ground. This leads to zero downtime, potential burnout, lower quality of work, lower productivity, another spiral that you go into. Would you agree that if you find yourself in a position where you don't allow yourself to pause, you don't allow yourself downtime, you almost feel guilty when you're not grinding all the time, that's a warning sign?
Absolutely. The hustle culture.
Yes.
Right? Here's the crazy thing. Our society is praising the hustle culture.
Yes.
What is praise? We just spoke about it. It's an applause. It's validation. That, therefore, creates a false dopamine hit that what I'm doing is right.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing it, I'm wrong. And therefore, the hustlers who therefore are successful is ahead of me. And so therefore I can't. What a lie.
Absolutely. But a definite warning sign.
100%.
That you're on the wrong track.
As that movie said, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Which movie was that?
I can't remember. It was a fantastic movie.
Okay, I have no idea what it was. All right, the second one for me is something you've spoken about, and that's identity. And I want to call this one the identity collapse. And this is where your self-worth merges with your performance.
Sure.
And the fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough when we miss goals or when there's poor outcomes, lead to an identity crisis. And that identity crisis spirals into avoiding risks, stagnant personal growth and development, and then even lower self-worth. And I think this is really what happens when your identity is so focused and so completely controlled by your job title, that when that job title or the success associated with the job title disappears, your identity is gone.
I almost have absolutely nothing to contribute, can you believe? That is so spot on. Maybe one comment on that. Ask yourself, who are you now and who do you want to be? And then if you can define the who do I want to be without linking it to money, title, or material possessions, I think you're tracking in the right direction. If you cannot define the future desired self without those 3 elements as an identity statement, not a desired life, there's nothing wrong, I believe. If someone says, I would like to retire at 40, or I really would love to drive a Ferrari, I don't believe there's anything wrong with that one-liner. But if that becomes the verbs that you use or the nouns that you use to describe who you are,
that's where the problem is. And I think the opposite of that is, again, the warning sign. So if you currently look at yourself, you look at your future self 10 years from now, and the only things you use to describe who you are is associated with money, is associated with your work, that's a danger sign that your identity is linked to the success you have.
100%.
All right. The third one for me is perfectionism as a shield. I spoke about perfectionism a lot in my previous episode that I did. We firstly know that the pursuit of perfectionism is an unattainable standard.
100%.
But people use it to maintain an illusion of control. And you've just spoken about that locus of control. But when you feel you are when you are pursuing that perfection and that control, that can easily lead to burnout or the intentional fatigue I spoke about in the previous episode of IWPK. The problem with perfectionism is it inevitably leads to a slip-up. That slip-up causes you to spiral into shame and failure. the abandonment of good intentional habits, and ultimately more loss of control.
Yeah.
So again, I think perfectionism in itself, and this coming from a perfectionist, is a danger sign that you've got a success addiction.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is one of the differences between you and I. I am not a perfectionist at all. At all. And there's a lot of theory and research around perfectionism and personality, right? Which is an entirely different conversation. But
when are you going to analyze that part of me? Not on the
now.
episode. Please not now.
Okay,
yes.
We'll create a separate session.
Okay.
So again, I think to the intro of the conversation, perfectionism could potentially be linked to that projection I spoke about. And it's not about this, it's about that. Often perfectionists are displaying or at least chasing, because we said it's actually impossible. It's not really impossible. There are elements in your life that is perfect.
Of course.
Your Excel spreadsheets are perfect.
They're perfect. But remember that if you're a perfectionist, you want perfectionists in every aspect of your life.
Aspect of your life.
And that's the impossible part.
And when those areas that you can't get, you get obsessed about.
Yeah.
And then you start making mistakes. I've seen in the world of work where perfectionists actually have a very low outcome in terms of workload, which creates anxiety, which creates the hustle culture. But again, I don't want to get sidetracked. I agree with you. Perfectionism is a warning sign. It's a flag. Check your personality, because some people are more inclined to be perfectionistic than others. I literally don't care about it. There's nothing in my personality that drives me to perfection. That's why I don't go to the driving range. That's why I don't, I'm not obsessed about anything, because I'm not chasing perfection, because it's literally not in me. But some people can't help it.
Yeah.
So if you are more inclined to be perfectionistic because of your personality, again, a flag, a trigger, get a coach, get someone that can analyze your personality, that can help you understand and identify the areas in your life that you are being perfectionistic in. And then most importantly, create the self-awareness of the impact that is having in relation to your success addiction.
But start with developing an awareness around it so 100%. That you know how it impacts your life and 100%. How you can control it.
100%.
All right. My fourth and last warning sign is the future pacing problem. Again, I love this term. The future pacing problem for me is the inability to inhabit present success because the mind is already focused on the next mountain you want to climb. So you almost become unable to enjoy the present, to enjoy the here and now, the short-term achievement, the small goals that you achieve, because your mind is so completely fixated on that big, hairy, audacious goal, that next mountain you want to climb.
Yeah.
And you spoke about it earlier. That's where it almost feels as if nothing is ever good enough. You struggle to even define what enough means. And the finish line constantly moves. And because that finish line constantly moves, because it's never enough, that's the part that causes you to always have inner peace out of reach.
Of the four, this is probably for me the most impactful one that you've mentioned, for two reasons. One, the effect of not being able to live in the present has got such a ripple effect on so much more than just yourself. The people around you never feel safe, psychologically safe. They never feel good enough. They can't get you to enjoy a moment that they're enjoying. What happens then is you get isolated. And this is something that happens to me a lot. And again, back to my personality, there's this amazing psychometric assessment called the Enneagram. And I actually don't think it's an official psychometric assessment, but it's a popular and very widely used assessment.
I've spoken it before.
I
had a guest. Yes.
Yeah. So my Enneagram profile is very much like this. I'm always in the future, thinking forward, and I can see the effect of that in my relationships and in Whamley, because I'm always, my head is always in the cloud, dreaming, visioning, and it's really hard then to celebrate a quick small win that happened this morning. I often move over to the next thing quickly, and then what also happens is you struggle to take people along with you on that journey because they're not in your head in 2030 or whatever the case might be. So it serves me well from a strategy perspective and leading a business and driving a vision, but it often nails me on the ground daily. enjoying the present moment. Like, let's take the Springboks. I was really frustrated with the red card that we got against Italy on the weekend. But my mind was immediately, what is going to Rassie do with Ireland this week? Because we're now down 2 locks. And so, there's good and bad around it. But from a red flag perspective and success addiction, if you can't savor the moment and enjoy the present, there is definitely a warning sign there.
Good.
Yeah.
Last thing on this point, have you heard of the psychological concept of arrival fallacy? I'm speaking to the psychologist.
Yet.
It's a term that was coined by a Harvard psychologist, and he said it's the false belief that once you arrive at a certain destination, you believe you will be forever happy.
Yeah.
The success addict lives their entire life in the grip of this fallacy.
And waiting for that moment.
Yes.
100%.
Never comes.
It never comes.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the worst thing that can happen to you on your deathbed, is you lie there with all your wealth, with all your possessions, with all your achievements, and one of your last thoughts is, was this it?
Or I never enjoyed it.
And therefore, I never enjoyed it. I was in such a hurry to get somewhere that doesn't exist that I actually didn't stop and enjoy the journey, which is probably, Paul, the most existential question or theme that we all are confronted with and should be reminding ourselves with. I was in a conversation with someone yesterday who's 5 years younger than I am, and he deeply expressed his concern around, we only get to live life once. Are you intentional about the enjoyment of this thing called life?
Absolutely.
And that fallacy that you spoke about is so true. And it just links this entire conversation back to, what do you believe is the success that you're addicted to going to serve you when you finally reach it and then you never do?
Absolutely, yeah. But I do think what we need to do is try and get now to the interventions, the intentional interventions that is needed to avoid that success addiction causing you to never find the inner peace that you want. So I want to go through a few intentional interventions, how to break these cycles that we spoke about, and just get a brief view from you on them, or maybe a comment on them. And maybe you have some ideas on how to break these cycles. So I've written a few things down. For me, it's about moving from success to significance. We've spoken about that in our episode about legacy.
Yes.
And yes, you and I are different ages, different generations, different personalities, but also different places in our careers, in our journeys. And I think it's important to acknowledge that maybe for you, the focus is bigger on success now, where for me, it's more about impact, legacy, significance.
Yeah.
So I think it's about moving from success to significance. It's moving from a mindset of more to a mindset of impact, from accumulation to distribution, from addiction to intention, from what can I get, money, status, validation, to what can I give, wisdom, mentorship, value. I agree that it's probably easier for me to think in those terms because of where I am in my journey than it is for you. But maybe a comment from you on that?
Firstly, agree with all those. Love those. What do you call them? Dark side, bright side. Dark side, bright side. I mean, let's get them in the show notes. Those are super valuable. Maybe my perspective on an intervention, and I'll only give one, is the foundation of who you are and why you are doing what you're doing. I believe if you can clearly define that, regardless of your age, from there, enjoyment can kick in. And ambition can kick in, and seasons of working hard can kick in. But if you're always able to return back to the definition of the core identity that is not linked to a phallus outcome, then that as a foundation from an intervention perspective can serve you well. Because I spoke about mentorship and accountability buddies earlier in the episode, but all of those could serve you or could not serve you if what you believe about yourself is untrue or not rock solid. It's like telling an addict that what you're doing is bad for you, and that addict agreeing with you that it is bad for them, but not changing behavior because of something that fundamentally they don't believe yet, either about themselves or about the outcome of what they're busy with. There's not a single addict in the world. Well, maybe that's a harsh statement, but most addicts will tell you that I know what I'm doing isn't right, but they don't fully comprehend or understand the why behind it. And I think that's where the deep work lies. That's uncomfortable. The deep work, which is always about the self. If you can circle back to the self and understand and define that foundationally, then these shifts that you spoke about are possible.
Love it. Well put. I want to end off the interventions part with just 3 things that comes from a previous episode that I did where I spoke about fixing a problem, accepting a problem, and exiting a problem. And I want to apply that to this conversation as well. And I thought of 3 intentional practices to break the cycle that we're speaking about, the downward spiral, the dark spiral. The first for me is you need to fix the metrics of success in your brain. And yours are going to be different than mine. But a few examples of that is move from measuring and defining your success from hours worked, money earned, revenue and profit to meaningful output, depth of focus and legacy.
Love it.
So fix your metrics. The second one, accept the messy middle. I spoke about the messy middle in that previous episode. Not every day is going to be a win.
Yeah.
Inner peace requires accepting the ebb and flow of life.
Sure.
And you have to allow yourself to be a work in progress, sometimes to fail, and sometimes to take things slower. You need to find intentional acts of defiance against the addiction in your life. And you need to accept that progress is not linear, failure is data, and not a verdict on your character.
Oh.
Accept the messy middle.
That's good.
And then the last one, we spoke about that, for me, is exit the comparison game. Intentionally disconnect from the comparison game and the narratives of success that are not yours.
That is brilliant. Nothing to add.
Wonderful.
Unbelievable.
All right, we've come to the conclusion. Now, I want to do this differently than we normally do.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing about a lot of the episodes that we do, and this is common for most YouTube videos. Not a lot of people stay to the end.
No.
So I want to reward the people that have stayed to the end. The really loyal listeners that know us, that enjoy the content we do. Okay. And I want to give them a really spectacular conclusion today.
Okay.
And I want to try and do it by giving you a few quotes that I read. But the best part of it, the last few I'm going to give you are some movie quotes.
Okay.
And I really worked hard on getting relevant movie quotes to this topic. But before we get to the movie quotes, here's something that Greg McKeown said. He said, we have a tendency to think that if we're not grinding, we're not earning our keep. But the opposite is true. Rest is the prerequisite for doing good work. When I read that, I felt like it was speaking to me. That's a problem that I have at the moment, because ultimately success addiction asks you to trade your inner peace for a scoreboard that is never finished. The intentional path asks you to define the game, set your own rules, and know when you have truly won.
Yeah.
You like that?
Power.
All right.
Power.
There's another one I have on true wealth, and this was by a guy called Naval Ravikant. A calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love. These things cannot be bought. They must be earned.
100%.
I love that one as well.
Love that one.
All right. Let's end off with 3 movie quotes.
Okay.
And I know you're not as big a movie fan as I am, so the chances of you knowing these movies and what movies they're from, these quotes, are slim, but we're going to try it anyway.
Okay.
And I really think these 3 quotes absolutely is a great conclusion to this conversation on success addiction. So the first one for me is, we work jobs we hate, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like.
No idea.
Fight Club. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't.
There's a gap in your education. Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, Helena Bonham Carter.
I should go and watch it.
Amazing movie. There's a gap in your education. You have to go and watch it.
Okay.
We work jobs we hate, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like. Love it. All right, the next one. And this one speaks to this whole thing about the prison that success can become. And that's a hint to which movie it comes from. These walls are funny. First you hate them, then you get used to them. Enough time passes, you get so dependent on them. That's when you're institutionalized. I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living or get busy dying. Prison movie.
Prison, is it that that one? Yeah, that Shawshank Redemption.
You got it. The
Yes.
Shawshank Redemption.
Incredible.
And I think this quote really speaks to the institutionalized mindset of the success addiction itself.
Yeah.
A dependence on the gold-plated cage. The core choice for the high achiever is whether to be consumed by the system or to break free and truly live.
Yeah.
And then my final quote, I don't think you'll get this one. Still a great movie. To see the world, things dangerous to come, to see behind walls, to draw closer, to find each other, and to feel.
Oh, I want to say The Notebook, but it's obviously not right.
No. And he says, that's the purpose of life. It's from a movie called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And if you haven't seen that, another one I can highly recommend to you and to all our listeners. So that's really it from me in terms of quotes. I want to end off with a challenge of the week from my side, and that is where you are in your life. If you are institutionalized by a success metric that no longer serves you, now's the time to take an intentional step this week to break that wall and to choose to get busy living.
Incredible. I love that. The only thing that I can add to that is if your identity definition has metrics in it, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Wonderful. Love it. We need to figure out what movie that's from.
I think it is Step Brothers or The Wedding Crashers.
We're going to go and check it out.
We'll go and YouTube it right now.
Yeah. As always, that was amazing.
This was our last episode for the year.
Yes, let's not forget about that. I think that this is the last episode we'll release for the year. We'll be back in 2025. We've got
2026.
2026. Thank you. We've got a lot of topics lined up for next year.
Yeah.
Some exciting new ideas for our masterclasses.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to what 2026 holds for both of us.
Yes.
Specifically with this masterclass. And I think we can just end off with a brief message to our listeners. Maybe you want to do that for us.
I think firstly, thank you. Thank you for following. Thank you for listening. Thank you for mailing us. Thank you for bumping into us and going, hey, I really loved that episode. We're doing this for you as much as we're doing it for ourselves. I think when you reached out and you said, look, do I want to do this? It was an immediate yes, and it's been an amazing year with fantastic content and such stimulating conversations. I almost feel like, and I don't know if it is actually true or if it's just because of the fact that it's the last one, but this felt like the most enjoyable one for me, even though they've all been incredible. So no, thank you so much for you.
Yeah, and a thank you to you as well, Francois. And have a wonderful festive season and a great new year, and we'll see you in 2026.
Enjoy.
You've been listening to Intentionality, where we grow together. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a rating. And if this helped you today, share it with someone else on the same journey. Until next time, keep showing up with intention.